Compromise. It's one of the most celebrated and important words in marriage. Pastors preach it, therapists teach it, relationship books are full of it. I kind of want to say that sentence again. Relationship books are full of it. And if you grew up in a church, you were almost certainly taught that a good wife is a woman who can compromise, who lays down her own preferences for the sake of the relationship, the family, the peace. So what happens when that beautiful, virtuous word gets picked up by a husband with narcissistic traits and turns it into a weapon? What happens when every disagreement ends with you giving ground? When meeting in the middle always somehow means you moving towards him and him staying exactly where he was? When you bring a need, a real legitimate need, and by the end of it, you're the one apologizing. That's not compromise. That's a silencing system dressed up in reasonable language. And today I'm going to show you exactly how it works, and more importantly, how to recognize it when it's happening to you. Quick note here, before we get into this, if what I just described already feels uncomfortably familiar, there are two things that I want you to know about. The first is our Detox Your Marriage community. It's a private space for women navigating exactly this kind of marriage. The link is down below. The second is a discovery call with me, where we can talk briefly, 15 or maximum 20 minutes, about your specific situation and whether further help is the right next step for you. That call is completely free, no strings attached. The link for that is also in the description. Now let's get into it. Let's get clear about what real compromise is and what it is not. Because in order to recognize the counterfeit, you need to know what the real thing feels like. Real compromise has a very specific texture. Both people come to the table with something they want, and both people feel genuinely heard before any resolution is reached. Both people give something up, but when it's over, both people feel reasonably okay about the outcome. Not perfect, maybe, but respected, seen, like they matter in this relationship. And that last part is actually the most important. Real compromise leaves both people feeling like they have value in the relationship, like their perspective was worth considering, even if it didn't fully prevail. Now, does that sound like what happens in your marriage? For many of the women that we work with, their answer is a quiet, resigned no. Because what they've experienced is something that wears the clothing of compromise. It's got the language of compromise, but the functions, it functions in exactly the opposite direction. So how does a husband with narcissistic traits actually weaponize compromise? Like, how does this work? So let me give you 3 specific patterns, and as I describe them, notice whether any of these feel familiar. The first pattern is the moving goalpost. So you bring a concern, and he listens, or he appears to listen, and he offers what sounds like a reasonable middle ground. And you agree, relieved, thinking that, oh, that went well. But then he doesn't follow through. Or he follows through just long enough for you to stop watching and paying attention. And then when you bring it up again, he acts as though that conversation never happened, or acts as though you are the unreasonable one. You know, we already talked about this. We already dealt with this. Why are you bringing it up again? The compromise was never real. It was a way to close off the conversation so that he could get back to doing whatever he's doing. The second pattern is the concession that costs only you. So watch carefully the next time you negotiate something in your marriage. And I mean, we all do it, right? We all have to do it in a marriage. It's 2 people. Notice in your case who actually gives something up. Real compromise is bilateral. Both people sacrifice something. But in a narcissistic dynamic, his compromise is like theoretical. He agrees in principle to something that he was never really going to change. You, meanwhile, end up giving up something concrete, something real, something important, right? Your preference, your plan, your feeling, your voice. So the trade is not an equal trade. And over years, that asymmetry becomes the entire foundation of the relationship. So that's number 2. Third pattern, it's the most insidious. It's compromise used as punishment. So you make a request. He responds not with a genuine counter offer, but with a performance of reasonableness designed to make you feel unreasonable. Let me explain. It's like he says, I'm trying to meet you halfway here. I don't know why everything has to be such a big deal with you. So the message is not, let's find a middle ground, let's meet in the middle. The message is, your need is a problem. And the fact that you have it says something unflattering about you. And so you leave the conversation having surrendered, not because the negotiation failed, but because you were made to feel ashamed for initiating it. When compromise consistently leaves one person feeling smaller, quieter, more uncertain, more apologetic, we can call it a lot of things, but that's not compromise. That's a slow, polite erasure. Stay with me until the end of this video because I'm going to tell you the single most important shift a woman can make that takes the power of this weapon completely away from him. And it's not what most people expect, and it's not what most marriage advice will ever tell you. So you're not going to get this in the couples therapy office. So stay with me here. I want to take a moment to name what this actually does to a woman over time, because it's easy to dismiss individual incidents as small. Oh, it was just one argument. It was just one thing I let go. No big deal. But a pattern of false compromise repeated over months and years has a deep cumulative effect that goes very deep. It teaches her to distrust her own needs. If every time she brings something forward, the outcome is shame or silence, then she learns to stop bringing things forward. Not consciously, but she does not decide to stop consciously. She just finds that the reflex is gone. The impulse to ask, to want, to expect for herself, it gradually goes quiet. And that teaches her that the relationship is more important than she is. Think about that for a moment. The relationship is more important than she is. You see, real partnership says that both people matter. False compromise says the relationship stays intact as long as you keep making yourself smaller. So she makes herself smaller and smaller and smaller still. And perhaps most painfully, it teaches her to mistake her own compliance for virtue. She might rationalize it internally, saying, well, this is what being a good wife looks like. This is being mature. This is being the bigger person. Maybe even spiritualizing it. This is Christ-likeness. But what she's done is spiritualized her own disappearance. And that is the most, at least one of the most heartbreaking things that we encounter as we're working with women to help them recover themselves and change the dynamic of the relationship. You see, you were never called to disappear. You were not created to be a permanent giver in a relationship that only takes from you. And laying down your life, whatever that means exactly, does not mean laying down your whole selfhood. So I promised you the shift that changes everything. Let's dig into it. The reason false compromise works as a weapon is because it depends on her needing his approval in order to feel okay about herself. So every time she brings a need and he dismisses it, and she backs down, what she's really communicating deep down is your validation of my needs matters more to me than the need itself. Right? His disapproval hurts too much. The conflict costs too much. And so she pays every time. So the shift is this. She does some internal work to stop needing his agreement to know that her need was real and legitimate. We call this self-validation, self-sovereignty. I want to be clear here. This is not bitterness. This is not stonewalling. This is not a sudden dramatic confrontation. This is quiet. This is a quiet, settled knowing inside herself that she does not require his buy-in in order to trust her own experience. That her need was real, whether he validates it or not. That she's a full person, whether or not this conversation ends with his approval. We watch in our private coaching work that when a woman reaches that place, this false compromise dynamic loses almost all of its power. Because you can't silence someone who's not dependent on you to define her. You can't weaponize reasonableness against someone whose sense of self is not on the table for negotiation. Like I say, this is what we call self-sovereignty. And it's not something you perform. It's something that you build from the inside out. And it is the deepest, most lasting work a woman in this situation can do. That work, building your own unshakable internal foundation, is exactly what we help professional, accomplished women do in our private coaching work. Not just understanding what is happening to you, not giving you superficial tactics to try and say it this way to make him listen. You know that doesn't work. But what we're doing is actually changing who you are at the level where the damage has been done, and that almost always changes the relationship. Because when you take your power back in the way that I'm describing, then he can't bully you around with this fraudulent compromise nonsense. So if you're ready to stop walking into that trap, I've got two invitations for you. The first is our Detox Your Marriage community. It's a private, safe space for women who are living like this and are sick and tired of living like this. It's facilitated by me and Damaris, my wife and partner, and it's free and there's no strings attached. The link is down below. The second is a personal, private discovery call with me. A real conversation, again, no pressure, just honest dialogue, getting a handle on what your unique situation is, and then mapping out what change is possibly looking like, how things might change for you. So if something in this video said to you, this is me, then probably that call is you're going to be your next best step. The link is down below, and again, there's no charge for that call. And if this video gave words to something a woman in your life has been trying to say, why don't you share it with her, as well as like it yourself and subscribe to this channel? Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for someone we love is hand them language for what they are living through. Okay. See you in the next video.